now call this meeting of the Silver Falls School District Board of Directors to order. Thank you, audience members, for being here tonight. And to note attendance, Tom is absent today, but he prearranged with all of us. So there are 6 of us. We have a quorum. The agenda review is next. Is there a motion?
I move to accept the agenda as is, as read.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the agenda as it is. Any discussion? All right, we'll vote.
Josh?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
Tom? Oh, excuse me. Derek?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Owen?
Yes.
All in favor?
All right, discussion item number 3A is the budget development process and update. Dr. Joe Morlock will be giving us an update.
All right, Chair Trader and members of the board, thank you so much again. We're bringing back the document with some updates and some further discussion items. I want to be clear for the crowd out here and as well as people watching at home that this document tonight is not for you to vote on. So you're not voting on things within the document. Tonight's only votes later on will be authorizing us to move ahead with the negotiations with Sodexo if you approve the RFP, opening up the transfer window, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and then authorizing me to begin the conduction of a RIF. Okay, but these things that are in this document here are not up for vote tonight, so I wanted to be clear. This is all in discussion. If they were going to be up for a vote, they would be down later in the agenda. So I just wanted that to be clear for everyone before we got going, okay? Okay, so we, the top box, I'll call it in row 1, we've unchanged those numbers. We have not changed those numbers since the last meeting. I wanted you to see those again. We're still at the 42.7 FTE for licensed and the 44 full-time or equivalent of classified at those 2 numbers. So 18% in licensed, is 16.5 currently in classified. So those numbers, that total amount, and you'll see this later on when we get into the infamous row 8, that those options are ways to get at this same number. Okay, so we're all still trying to target at this one, and the options we talk about tonight are all different ways to get to that same number. Okay. We're still proposing the same amount of reduction at the DO staffing. It's about 23%. That includes administrative, non-represented, and classified positions. Okay, so that is also unchanged from our last meeting. A couple of small changes that I did. So I did say this was updated. We've still got plenty of work to do, of course, with the rest of the budget, but we are, at this point, going to propose that we move ahead with the 5-day week and look at the reduction of routes. We still have some tinkering to do with that and some other negotiations, but at this point we're going to kind of settle in on that with all the rest of the changes. That feels like, I don't know, you're not voting on this tonight, so we can bring it back if you would like to have a vote later on. But that's kind of how we're focused so far. For food service, and later on tonight, as I said in the meeting, there is an action item for you to move ahead with if you so choose to approve the awarding of the RFP. It's a 2-step process. First of all, the RFP is good for 1 year and then can be extended into the next few years. But it's a 1 year for the 24-25 school year. After the awarding of the RFP, then we go into negotiating price, negotiating costs, and things like that. So under food service, we still have not gone through and done some of the other work in our reductions. So at this time, we're holding off on reductions in food service until we find out as we go through the process with Sodexo. The real estate, again, we're still working on the listing and property division, so that is all in progress. So we've got that moving along, and we'll get that listed and the application into the city as soon as possible for us to look at moving ahead with the so-called back 40, otherwise known as the 13.46 on the backside of Robert Frost. One of the strategies we used as we built the staffing lists for schools was to consolidate some of our title grants as well as redeploying our SIA Measure 98s and anything else we could use for class size reduction, as well as other ways to staff buildings and positions. And so that strategy is unchanged from last time. We're still continuing on to figure out the best ways we can to keep class sizes as low as we can, as well as support staff in every building. The block schedule, moving back to a 7-period day, and then the middle school moving to a 7-period day, that is also fully underway, and that is the way that they are staffing their building and preparing for schedules for next year. So I wanted to give you an update on that. Those are ways, again, to reduce the size of class at this level of a reduction in staffing, that this is one of those ways to do it. All right, into row 8. So when in the course of human events, it is sometimes necessary to work through some of the challenges that we have together, and I wanted to make sure that in this area we have some of the options that are available. I'm going to say this again. I took out the dollar amounts because people were getting hung up on, is this an additional amount for this closure thing, and does it go up there and go up there? So these are some of the options that we're considering. I'm going to present another option tonight, which is why we have an action item later in the agenda, which is around opening the transfer window. One of the things we're trying to do during this whole process is make sure that as we are staffing buildings, that we find at least a more equal level of students per classroom across the board. So it doesn't matter which school you're in, you're going to have a similar class size. One of the challenges is, and I know out there in the interwebs we've seen, there's a spreadsheet that gets passed around that talks about the cost, and you've got teachers per building, and some buildings are less expensive than others. And the challenge with that spreadsheet is that it has no nuance, because it doesn't actually talk about the programs that are in those buildings. So it may be in one building that we only have 3 regular classroom teachers and a support person. In a different building, we may have 2 specialized programs that have additional adult support that are required as per their IEP. You may have additional English learners that also come with additional funding that we fund. So I haven't responded to a lot of those because it's too hard to explain all the nuances that go into that. And so that spreadsheet is truly irrelevant. I know people want to focus on it, but I'm just going to tell you that they don't have the kind of nuance and the kind of things that are necessary. So when we're looking at class size, we're not considering all the rest of the things that we are going to have. We will have special education. We will have specialized programs. We will have some pull-out. We will have some push-in. The difficulty, again, is in some of those class size numbers, it also doesn't show when certain students will push in, so those numbers will go even a little bit higher. So I just want to be cautious on that. When we're looking at this, we're looking at what I'll call a standard classroom as the way for us to staff those. And then the additional staffing that comes along with the needs of the students, that's on top of. But that's why I haven't really gone into discussion around whether the spreadsheet's right or wrong, because it's too hard to go into that level of detail and nuance and all those things. So it's not really relevant. I know that I'll probably take some heat for that from somebody out there in the interwebs, but I'm just telling you, it doesn't really add up. So the options we've had on so far, we talked about the suspension or the closure of schools. We have talked about reorganizing our elementary schools or K-8 schools to consolidate grade levels, reduce the blends, whatever. We've also talked about closing grade level at one school. That was moving the kindergarten from one school to another school. The option we're also now looking at, and this may actually end up being our best option, is to reopen the school transfer window. So normally during a year, we have a cutoff that we have done by procedure per process that says by April 1st we stop, and then we figure out if we have if we have grade levels that are open, we figure out which ones we have, and then we have a process where we go with in-district transfer first, inter-district with sibling, inter-district from out-of-district that have siblings. We have people who come in, or the other one. At this point, past that April 1, it's now just first come, first serve. And it's hard to know if we have something open or not open, and it's people who are on the phone all the time trying to check in. So one of the ways for us to be able to balance some of these class sizes would be then to reopen and go through a more open process, which then puts everyone on alert that if you would like to apply, that's both intra-district, people who are in other schools in our district, and inter-district, which are come from outside, because we do have some that were denied in this last year. That would be another way for us to say, we have this school open and these grade levels, right? So it doesn't have to be every grade level, every school, and we're primarily talking about our K-8, K-5. So that allows us then to say, if we can fill these grade levels at these levels, then we're able to then have a more equal level of staffing. So we might say that there's one spot open at 4th grade, and there are 25 people who would like that spot. Well, we have a process for that, right? We have either a priority list or then we have a lottery for it. So it provides kind of some openness for that. It also allows us to open up multiple grade levels at different schools depending upon what the numbers look like. So I'm going to pause there for a second. Do you have any questions about the transfer? Yes, sir.
So I'm trying to understand exactly what you're saying with the intra-district transfers. Are we saying that we're going to make an announcement that we're allowing, hey, this is open, apply to any school you want? And that, I mean, I could just see chaos happening with that. So, because I guess there's that way to do it, because then you're right, it's absolute first come, first serve. But then, Lord have mercy, I could see what that would look like.
Right.
Between schools. So what exactly are you proposing with the
So-
intra-district transfer?
Yeah, so I'm proposing that you open the transfer window for both intra and inter, and to look at, we'll post it by grade level and by school. So we're still working through which ones we need to fill the most. Does that make sense? So let's say that you have 16 in one grade level, and you need to get that up to the 25 or 26. Or it might be that you have a grade band together, K1, 2, and you still only have 22 kids there, but you want to get to that 25, 26 level, right? So you can say, we're going to open up one slot in kindergarten, one in first grade, one in second grade, whatever the numbers look like. So every school has slightly different numbers in those. So you can say, here are the grade levels that are open. If you'd like to apply to be in that, then you can. It might be lots and lots of people applying for those things, which then takes you into, we have a process to go through those, whether it's the intra-district, and there's a process laid out in the policies that we included later on tonight. And so that allows you then to make those selections. Right now, it's just first come, first serve, and we don't really have to open one or another one, and it's a little bit opaque for people who don't know what the process is. So the regular process that you do every year, which ends April 1st, I'll be proposing we open it for a 2-week period starting this Wednesday through the 5th of June. So it'd be May 22 to 5th of June. To then open it up, we take in all the names, all the information. They go through the same process. We cannot recruit, just to be clear, so the district may not recruit from other districts.
Nor should they recruit
They should
within
not be
district.
recruiting within the district as well. That is correct. That's actually in the policy. So
If we do this, it has to be like super clear that we're following the procedures. There's no good old boy favors being done, families that first come, first serve.
right, and that's why we actually have in the procedure that follows the policy, we actually have a process for that,
Okay.
that we would follow the regular lined out process as normal. So that actually opens it up to any and all who would like to at least reapply to do that. And some people may have made other choices and may not, but that's what actually opening it up does, says here's the process, rather than, by the way, if you happen to make a call on Tuesday, it's kind of like when you go to, the discount store, when they happen on Tuesdays, they load everything in quickly, so.
I just, oh, go ahead, Derek.
Sorry, go ahead.
I just want to clarify, so up until April 1st, we have a more centralized process. And then after April 1st, is it less centralized? No?
It's still centralized, but you have to be kind of, it's like getting concert tickets. You
It's
have to
like
wait
in the know.
online,
You have to
wait,
be in the know.
Reload,
Okay.
and see.
Got
And so it's this opening up is like the regular process that we do for everyone that usually closes April 1st. And then occasionally somebody leaves, oh, I've got a space over here, and we post it. It's not like it's top secret, but it's one of those things that people would always have to pay attention to. You know, if you apply and you get denied, you might say, well, I don't really have a chance to get in there. So, and it's just a way for us to look and see, can we balance some class size numbers with both intra and inter-district to help with some of that.
So really, we're just making it much more transparent and following that process.
Correct. We're making it as we would normally do it before April 1st.
1st.
And this allows everybody that kind of final chance, of course, because we're talking about late May to early June, but that would be that's the differential.
Got it.
Yeah.
Derek?
Yeah, and then just to fully understand, the benefit of this strategy is trying for a little bit of kind of self-regulation, potentially maybe not having to do as much shuffling of teachers and students, that the benefit potentially behind it.
Yes, that's correct. So the idea is that we look through then our class size numbers that we have, who's in which grade levels and what the schools look like, and say, okay, so if we have 2 slots here and 1 there, it would kind of self-balance out. Because if we can reduce either blends, or we can increase up to a more a more equal number across all schools, then we're not having that conversation like, well, we have smaller ones over here and larger ones over there. And that's been part of the feedback is like, well, we have really small ones over here and it's not fair. And so it provides a little more fairness around that, and it allows us to figure out, can we get them in there and actually balance them out, because it may balance out that way. And we'll look at it and say, hey, we only got one slot in third grade over at such and such school, and that's the one, and we go through a process. And it will take extra work, but it also takes us through the right process and the right channels and by the procedure that we have lined out.
I think also using the strategy gives us a deliberate strategy on potentially over time increasing our enrollment back. We're still down
Correct.
from, I think, 230 students from 2020. This by means will allow us a controlled nature to eventually, hopefully, maybe even raise our enrollment back to where we were 4 years ago.
Right.
How does it work? Say we do this and we get, you say your first date is April 1st? Am I hearing that right? Which is of next year, so this would be,
So normally you have and I'm not sure when it actually opens, but it does close on April 1st.
Yes.
Right? So normally you have a transfer time open because you're trying to figure out how many students we're going to get and how do we need to staff those and what's that look like, right? And do we have space? After that April 1st is when it's just on a case-by-case basis if something happens to open. I'm recommending that we do a more open process now to see kind of where we are. That allows us to look at the numbers in the different buildings and then say, we may only have one slot at one building. You might have 12 at another one, and it might be across 4 grade levels. But that would give us that opportunity to say, here are the ones that are open that we can apply for. And it may be lots of people applying for one spot, but we have a process for that. So we would be able to go through the regular process, which is lined out in the policy.
and I guess the reason I'm asking the question is because, say we get an influx of kids from out of district, so our enrollment numbers go up. How then do we know that, hey, that teacher's overloaded, we need to hire another one?
Well, and that's where I think we're going to keep it restricted for this year. There are too many unknown unknowns at this point, right? And so what we're looking at is for this coming year, rather than looking at it as a revenue builder, say we're going to use this as a way for us to create some more equality across the grade levels. If in the future that becomes a strategy that you want to open up, you still have to figure out what your capacity is, right? So if you have a 900 square foot classroom, which many of them are, you can't just put 68 kids in them. Say, oh, well, we'll add a second teacher, we'll call it good. So there is some balance in that, of course, on the sizes of your schools. But there are plenty of people who want to come. You just have to be careful that you're not overloading, because you have to have a certain number before you get enough revenue before you're actually covering the salary of someone. There is a balance in there. So, 2 more kids is not covering a full teacher salary, right? So you have to think about
I
that.
understand it now. So this is just meant to get to that equitable number of students for the teachers. It's not, like you said, where you have that idea, that number in your head, and we're trying to get to that.
Right.
Okay.
The inter-district would be restrictive to specific school and grade openings also?
Both inter and intra, right?
Yeah.
So we can't overload from, let's
Right.
say, everybody at one school in 3rd grade wants to go to another school in 3rd grade. Well, that's not gonna
Well,
help
yeah,
us if we don't have any room
and
for
what
it.
I'm getting at is
Yeah.
even district-wide, say, just pick a grade, say 4th grade is
Sure.
maxed out across the board, wouldn't make sense to bring in 4th graders, but maybe it
Correct.
would 5th or 3rd or whatever.
Right.
So,
All of these are ways for us to get at, so we're still having to make a large reduction for next year, and we're trying to make it so it's not quite so crazy and not so inequitable across schools. So we're trying to do both at the same time, and this feels like a less disruptive strategy. If this doesn't work in some way, then we have to look at other ways to do it. But, the other 3 that we've talked, the letter A about closing a school, that creates a lot of heartburn. And it's the same thing around on letter C, when you close a grade level and you're moving kids from one school to another school, again, there's heartburn. The reorganization at elementaries, whether we consolidate them or not, in terms of grade levels, there's going to be far more blends than were normal, because we've got to make sure that class sizes, again, aren't crazy. Like, well, there are, 38 fourth graders, but only 12 second graders. Well, we'll figure out how to do a blend in that. So there will be probably more blends next year anyway, just as a budgeting strategy. But allowing us to do some of this about bringing in a kid here or a kid there or moving a few from one building to another would create a bit more flow, and then it would be far less disruptive, because this would be, in this case, the choice of the family to say, this is where I want my child to go, or I want to be part of the Silver Falls School District, and I'm willing to drive them from, I'll use Salem as an example, because that's where a lot of our inter-district transfers come from. So this allows for that to happen and creates likely far less disruption. There's plenty of disruption as it is, as we put together the schools and the reductions. But this would take some of those other off the table, and we could actually focus on trying to get this done.
Joe, in the document you have the numbers 80 and 84 under 8D. Do you know what the projection is right now?
Well, that was for Pradham, and I don't remember where they are right this second. So
That's okay.
That's probably a note for myself that's just sitting there. But that's I was trying to find a minimum threshold. So if we don't get to that, do we have to do other kinds of things? And then I believe that was because past 84, then you start to get into numbers that are too large for even the spaces that they have, right? So there's a balance at some point. You can't just overload it just because you're trying to bring in more kids.
Got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
I'm sure Taryn will tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that was a general targeted area I was trying to reach.
Joe, you'd mentioned, especially option A, as we've heard over the last few weeks, being really causing a bit of heartburn within our communities, and again, amidst a very, very difficult time. If there's something we can do to minimize that heartburn, I think we need to really commit to that as a board. So it may behoove us as a board to really hone in on option A, which has been presented to us, have a maybe further discussion on where we're all at with that, and say, it may be beneficial for us as a board to make a commitment to our communities to remove any option of suspension of any buildings within our district at this point, because we know how much disruption and heartburn it's causing. And I'm talking K-8s, I'm talking K-5s, I'm talking Sequoia. We heard testimony last week on that. It may behoove us to have that discussion, to be very honest and open to our community, saying, look, option A is not an option anymore, given the option B, C, and D that we've been provided tonight. So I'm curious to what others may think on that, because I do think we need to make a commitment to our community on that.
Yeah, I think it's good to voice that, after our last meeting, I really felt like we were past option A. Like option A, if we had other options that were going to get us to a point where we could staff in a more equitable manner, then that's what we would do, because obviously we don't want to go straight to the most disruptive option. So that's been in my head, and I don't think it necessarily was super transparent, though. And when people see this infamous line 8, they don't necessarily have the context that we have from the meeting. So that's where I'm at.
Well, my feeling, Aaron, is that, and I think in line with what Joe said, we don't necessarily know whether this other option is going to work. We'll know after we open it up and see, but I'm definitely in favor of exploring other options first.
Yeah, I don't think you can take, at this point in time, say you're taking anything off the table. I told people the other day, if you had a list of 100 of these, my 100 would be furloughs, and probably my 99 would be closing a school, any school. And so, but to sit here and say right now that I'd say no, because a couple of these have ifs connected with them, if pan out. And I think we'd need to see hard figures before we could say that. I know I personally would have to see real hard figures before I could. But I'm not comfortable at this point in the process of just saying flat out that can't happen. So I think it ties the hands too much.
I think original purpose with looking at a couple of our smaller schools in specific was just the lower numbers to see if there's any cost savings that we could recognize. And it seemed like as we continue to learn, the bulk of those cost savings are due to reduction in staff. And so at this point, I do think there are other options to explore. It's not really something I'm giving heavy thought to. And several other reasons. I think before we got to the point of closing a school, we would need substantial community input before I think I would be comfortable moving forward. And with this process being expedited, because we do have some decisions to make very quickly, and that compressed time frame, I think is, I wouldn't want to make a decision that's going to have permanent, substantial negative costs without having that public input. So at this point with the information I have, I don't think it'd be something I would be willing to consider.
So I have a question that I've kind of been wrestling with today is, and I didn't even think we had authority to even vote on this necessarily based on kind of an email we got earlier today. So does the board even have input on something like this, or is this something you're going to do what's in your best, or what you feel is the best decision to make? I guess I'll start there.
Sure. I just want to say that there's no way that a school would be closed without a board vote.
Okay.
There's absolutely
Thank you.
no way.
Okay.
That would have been my answer too. That is not something that I would do unilaterally. I'm not even sure that I have authority to do unilaterally, so, but it wouldn't be something like that.
And the reason I bring it up is because I know that people are being told that they no longer have jobs this week. And that's a big deal. So how do we, I'm going back to Derek, when we closed Eugene Field, there was a committee for that. There was a thought out process. There was there's been multiple committees for any large decision. So making something a decision this quick, not comfortable with doing. Now, yes, everything's on the table, and I still, like some of the committee members, I'd like to see some harder numbers of how much money every school is getting and spending. So I'm still missing some of those pieces, but I'm letting you guys get the stuff done you need to, especially Kim, so I don't bombard you with those questions. Honestly, because we probably won't know. It's all going to change next year anyway. It's not something I'm a fan of, particularly because I know that we'll also lose significant revenue. There's no doubt in my mind that those parents from those schools, and they are very important schools, just like everyone we have, they will go away, a good portion of them. They're not lying. Sequoia Falls is another one that, I mean, Aaron brought it up. I can't get that one out of my head. And I haven't really heard any talk about it, of what's going to happen with that building or those kids. And it's a very hard discussion to have, but if we're talking about possibilities of closing buildings or schools, that one I think is not really, it's kind of, I think, stuck here, and not line 9 is possibly, 11 as a lease. So I guess a question I have, if we're considering those two schools, is this Sequoia fall under the same umbrella of obtaining row 1 as well?
So any reductions are all included in row 1. Row 1 and actually row 2, because row 2, just to remind everyone, is our DO staffing and administrative reductions. So rows 1 and 2 are the reductions that we're looking at. When it comes to something like Sequoia Falls, I haven't put it in this one because it's not necessarily a class size thing. The Sequoia Falls is a special kind of a program. It does have a high cost lease, and so we're trying to figure out options for that. And it also serves a part of your student community that would not be served well by another kind of a program. And it's hard to explain that if you've not seen poorly run programs in comparison to a really well-run program. And it is costly, and there are other kinds of things that come into it, and we have, community partners and things of that nature. But it is an expensive lease, so is there a different way to do that? Do we find someone to help us with the lease? Do we figure out a different way to do it? That's why that's still kind of in there. But everybody is taking a reduction in some place or another, and so we're making all those nips and tucks, and that's, again, on those first couple of rows, those are all included in those, right? So the difficulty's there. I also want to remind everyone that it came onto this sheet because the board asked to know what that reduction would equal. Not that that was something that you wanted to do. And I know that as soon as you put it on paper or it's out there in the interwebs, it becomes the truth and it is the thing, and that's what we're doing. The fact is that you needed to know what that reduction might look like. Is it our best choice? Probably not. There are a lot of other choices we can make. But also, it's important, I think, for at least translucency, if not transparency, to say, here are all the options, and these aren't all the options, because if I put them all in there, it would be overwhelming. You know, we go through all kinds of machinations about what's going to work, what's not going to work. And I don't want it to feel like we're doing yo-yo or we're doing bait and switch. We're not. We're coming up with additional ways to do it. We're trying to find the least disruptive way to make the best benefit. We're trying to keep the most jobs, and we're trying to keep the most people that we can among all these things. But that means we have to make other hard choices. And so that's why it's on here, right? I think it, you know, I want to just remind everybody that we put it on because you asked to say how much we save. Okay, that's what you know. And we can all argue over the details of that, and that's fine. But these are some of the options. There are probably 1,000 other options as we go through. But when it comes down to it, we have a certain amount of staffing reduction we have to make, and then we have to roll forward on that, and then try to keep the best parts of all the best programs we have. There are a lot of great things that we have in Silver Falls, so we're trying to keep as many of them as we can.
Josh, I wanted to go back to something that you said, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you said that you wanted to look at school by school, like costs, and I do think that what Joe said earlier today was really important, that it's apples to oranges sometimes, because especially the special ed piece, some of our schools have special ed programs and others don't, and I'm really glad that you brought that up, because context does matter, and then there isn't enough spreadsheet cells to fully define the nuance that you're talking about. So just for everybody, I just wanted to bring that up, because it's not something that had been in my head in recent days, so I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Joe, I'm gonna assume this has happened, but you know what they say about assume.
Yep.
At the district or your administrators, your working group level, is discussion go on? I don't care which one of these we talk about on here. Is discussion go on as far as both short-term and long-term effects on our students? Because to me, especially when we get all caught up with all these dollars, which is paramount with us right now, but at the end of the day, it's our students, and some things are going to have more long-term effects, some things are going to have more, be short-term, that sort of thing too. Is that in the discussion?
Yeah. We're asking the principals to do some really hard things right now. And part of that is around trying to figure out how to operate a school, because they know the kids are going to show up next September, and we're going to welcome them in, and we're going to have the best year we can possibly have. But they are worried about those things. So when we talk about the additional supports that we may have at some schools or other things that we've added in, and I want to be clear, the positions that have been added, the people that we have, the jobs that they're doing, they're all actually important. They're all good things. We can't afford them, right? But it's not that we've just hired just willy-nilly and say, let's just make a position. There are people doing hard work every day with kids. And so it's really hard for them to say, I'm not going to have that support person in this classroom because we can't afford that one. Or I'm not going to have enough teachers at this grade level, so it's going to be bigger class sizes. It's going to be harder on them. It's been very hard for them, and I'm quite proud of how they've had to step out of themselves a little bit to figure out how to do it as a team. And that's kind of back to that individual, how much schools each cost to operate. They're really thinking more in terms of what do we do for Silver Falls as a whole group, how do we get there? And yeah, there are challenges. So they're trying to say we need to have smaller class sizes at the much younger grades because they need a little more individualized attention. And then as they get into the last years, we call middle school, maybe they can have a little more space. But it's a difficult balance because every kid has their own level of need and support and ability, and so it's been very hard for them.
Yeah.
Again, we've hired people because we needed those people, because we wanted those people, because they're good people that work with our kids. Right. And so to pare that back in a significant way is challenging.
Yeah. And I think one thing to remember, and I'm sure that educators out here will know this. I'm not telling them anything they don't know. But I know my own experiences. I'd had 32 in a room, that it really wasn't a bad year because of the makeup of that 32. But then I'd have a year of 25 that, I was already retired at a very young age.
That was sophomores after lunch, right? Sophomores after lunch is the
So-
toughest group there is.
So when we start talking averages and numbers and everything, it doesn't look the same everywhere because it really depends on the makeup and
Yeah.
everything of the.
I'm really glad you said that, because that is true. It could be exactly the same number, and
Yeah.
it will not matter. It just has to do with the chemistry of the room. So that nuance, again, is also lost in all of this.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else on these? So we're going to work on, if the board so approves tonight on the transfer piece, then we will work on focusing on that as our primary, because if we're able to move that into the balance, we'll be okay. We still need to move ahead on building a budget and doing some reductions, but we'll start to focus in on getting that done, because that's quite a bit of a process for us to work on anyway.
Are you
Go ahead.
still entertaining questions on row 8? Is that where we're at?
I'm entertaining of it all night. I'll
So-
be here all week.
I am trying to understand. Trying to understand the kindergarten proposal between Central Howell and Prattam, just from the numbers side.
Okay?
So I looked today, and K-1-2, I think right now Prattam has 24 in that classroom. And then Central Howell, I think, has around 17 kindergartners. Say those numbers stay the same. And so next year, there'll be another 17 kindergartners at Central Howell, and there'll be another combined class of 24. How do we propose to put 17 kids into a class that already has 24?
Well, you'd be working from the assumption that the grade level bands as they are would be the same the next year.
Okay.
And that changes some schools have been more stable, like we got a K-1-2, we got a 3-4-5, we got a 6-7-8, right? So some of those have been more stable, but in that case, you're assuming that we would remain in the same grade level configurations that we have. And because the numbers change all the time, and I'm going to get the grade level wrong, and Taryn can knock me in the head later for this, but I think it's like a fourth grade that has the larger number, but the third grade has a smaller number, right? And so, we have more space at third grade than we do at fourth grade, and we just don't know what those would look like. And does that match better with a 2-3, or is it a 4-5? And it really depends on how many kids come, because people do leave also. They move, they decide they want to go somewhere else, whatever that looks like. So those grade levels do shift. Some places are more stable just because of the grade level bands they've set up, but yeah, we can't make assumptions on what the grade level bands would be the following year. They looked at those. As we went through how to do staffing, they have to consider, so if I have one fewer staff member, if I have a 25% fewer staff members or 12% fewer staff members, what do my grade level bands have to look like that I can actually make this operate? And I think that's the work they have to go through. And then I give them another goal. Okay, now we're going to work on this. Okay, so now I have to reconfigure this, and does that work? And do I have enough people to cover the music and PE to make sure we have, our prep periods and things of that nature, and a little bit of joy in the day.
One other thing for kind of, while we're still on 8, is just something to earmark for the future. And again, I'm not trying to get ahead of us because of where we're at, but I'm talking after we know our staffing levels at all of our buildings. We know things are going to look a little different, be a little different. If there's any chance for community input at each of our school communities, I think it would behoove us to set up times, if it could be before the end of this school year. I know that's asking a lot of our staff, given everything going on right now, or at some point, I think it would be nice that at every building, if our communities could give some input and give some, seeing kind of what is it potentially going to look like next year. I think it would really be beneficial for each of our buildings.
Yeah. No, I think that's fine. And having an information night and kind of here's where we are, and let's hear your feedback. I will also say that a lot's going to change between now and September, right? So all those things, all bets could be off when it comes down to late August, and all of a sudden we've learned some other things, right? We don't know our kindergarten numbers. We are guesstimating based on past history and what we have on those. I do also think it would be good for them to be able to see, there's going to be, people are going to be in, not everybody's changing buildings, but there are going to be people who are changing buildings. As we went through the staffing exercise to make sure that we could place as many people as possible, well, we have a job for you. It happens to be in a different building. You know, I think the board has gotten them, and I've gotten several emails like, please don't take Mrs. So-and-so because they're the greatest thing ever. And I get it. People love their teachers, and they don't want to see them go to another building. And I also want to make sure that if we can keep Mrs. So-and-so in a position, that a position is better than no position. So that's part of that challenge. And so it'll be good for them to be able to see that. Also knowing things will change between now and then, because people either may move or retire or decide they were going to do something else or take on a different grade level, or the numbers change. But we could certainly have some time for people to see what's happening. The principal's going to explain it far better than I can, because that's their building, their folks, and you know, they know what the schedule looks like. So yeah, we can do that.
Anybody else have anything else to say on 8? All right.
Okay, just moving quickly into the other one. We did talk about the early release maybe being retired for a year so we could get through. We think actually through some of the process that we were able to retain enough music and PE that we can still cover them and continue on. So that's to be continued, but we think that we've been able to solve most of that. We're still kind of working through that. But music and PE are part of, they're not the only ways we do that, but part of the scheduling process to make sure that we have you know, prep periods and time for that, and as well as, you know, joy for kids, music and PE. Not everybody's favorite class is English. I'm sorry to all the English teachers, but some kids like to run around or do things. So I think we may have solved that through our other process. So stay tuned on that, but I wanted to make sure I highlighted that for you. And then the other two, again, are unchanged. We're still looking at discretionary budgets and any other kind of reductions that we can make across the board. So that's kind of the update so far. So I want to give you those, and then I already kind of highlighted to you what the action items would be talking about later in the agenda.
All right. Well, it's time then, unless there's any other discussion on
Yeah, I
the
guess
last
just,
rows? Okay,
yeah,
go
quick
ahead.
one. So this week, the RIF list is finally getting done. I'm assuming the decisions on the rest of this, what's the timeline for that?
Well, I think that if we're going to move ahead with the transfer idea, then we'll kind of work on those. You know, some of the other things are still going to be in process as it is. So we're still working on lease things. We're still working on the property. We're still working on. So all those things are still underway, because we have to land on a budget number, because later on tonight we'll talk about what our budget committee dates are. So we have to be ready for that meeting. So some of that stuff has to be ready. You will likely have to do a supplemental budget after we get past the deadline of the June 30 into next year, and come back and do some additional detail. Right, so part of this is about getting to that landing space and say, this is what our numbers are going to be. They may change, and we're going to have to work through what that would look like. Well, you will all have to work through that with your newly selected interim superintendent and Kim, to figure out what that next step would be later on in the year. So we have to have some of these things settled by then.
So I guess my last clarifying question would be, when are parents across the district going to basically know the makeup of their school for September? So is their school open or closed, or what teachers are where? How does that, is that a process that's ongoing through the summer, all the way up until September, or are we going to know a little sooner?
The open or closed should be settled in the next little while. We're going to focus, we're not really focused on that at all. So we're going to look at this transfer piece. I think we're going to be able to move away from the closure piece altogether. I've left it on here because I think it's important to have it just out there for transparency, but we're moving beyond that to look at this fourth best options, and we think this is going to be able to do that. In terms of who their kid's teacher is going to be, they won't know until they show up, frankly, because there's going to be a lot of shifting around and moving and things. You know, if things open up and somebody's been put in a different building, they're going to want to go back to their building. So we don't want to create a bunch of false hope and say, or like, this is the way it's going to be. Like, no, things are going to move around and change. So they'll have an idea of what the number of teachers would be like, and the number of support staff, and all those kinds of things. But in terms of exactly who the folks are, they'll have an idea. But again, there are some movements and changes. So you know, it'll be when they show up and like, oh, I'm in Mrs. So-and-so's class, and here I am.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, we're going to move on then to public comment, and I'm going to read the statement. We're glad you're here and welcome you to address the board with your ideas, concerns, or compliments. Please keep the following in mind. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand to be recognized by the board chair. If attending remotely, please use the raise hand feature within Zoom. For the record, please provide your name and relationship to the district. Please keep individual remarks to 3 minutes. If speaking as a representative on behalf of a group of 3 or more, comment time will be extended to 5 minutes. A second public comment period, actually, we don't have that in there today. No second public comment period today because this is a special meeting. The board will not hear complaints against individual district staff or board members during public comment. Please understand that the board's primary role is to listen, and you likely will not receive an immediate response. Finally, remember, we all model the way for our students and ask that you share your thoughts respectfully and in accordance with the Silver Falls School District Board Decorum Agreement. Is there anybody in the room who would like to speak? Go ahead, Josiah. So Josiah, would you please state your name and relationship to the district?
Yeah, my name is Josiah Kelly. I don't know that tonight I'm speaking for more than 3, except for my family of 5 and my nieces and nephews and everybody else. So hopefully I'll not take too much time.
Okay, so Aaron's going to give you a 30-second warning when you're at 2.5 minutes.
Super dang duper. I would be curious with option number D, if there's been any questions with regards to the additional cost with regards for the transfer situation. It seems like opening that up may create a bunch of additional admin costs and things to do for people that already have a bunch on their plate. So I'd be curious whether that's been addressed yet. Last meeting, a man mentioned unemployment cost projections, since that's handled in-house. These RIF numbers seem to handle the shortfall, but don't include that additional cost that may be incurred, and I don't have any idea. Me and a couple guys in the back did some quick math, and while English was not my strong suit, no fault of Mrs. Morgan, but math was pretty sharp for me, and it looked to be another couple $1 million, and I don't know if that's been addressed yet. There's a bunch of talk about fare, and while that may be nice, fare may not be where we're at currently, and I'd really like more of the talk to be about how the dollars we do have serve the most students. There's a little talk about heartburn, and none of the decisions you guys make are going to prevent any of that. There's going to be heartburn no matter what. And so I think some insightfulness to how the dollars we do have can provide the most without real regards to fare, because that's not a word we use at my house. Almost nothing is fair, and it just comes down. I like the word joy, Mr. Morlock. And I think there's going to be joy in Silver.
30 seconds.
Just because of who we are. I'd leave you with, whether you've been here a while or you've been newly elected, stand strong to the voters who elected you and do the hard work that you've been elected to do. Don't fall short just because you're low on experience. I think you can be confident in the voters who voted for you and make the tough decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Josiah. Is there an online person with their hand up?
Yeah, Lynette. So Daniel, if you can permit Lynette.
Hello.
Lynette, can you hear us?
Yes, I
Okay.
can.
All right. Are you speaking for yourself or for a group?
For a small group,
Okay, can you identify who the group is?
it's just some colleagues and some friends.
Okay, and can you explain your relationship to the district?
I have been a parent for a lot of years and a volunteer. I was a classified employee, and now I am privileged to be a teacher at Butte Creek School.
All right, we're gonna give you 5 minutes then, and Erin is gonna give you a verbal 30 seconds warning.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. Along with the entire community of Silver Falls School District, we've been dismayed to watch this embarrassing fiasco unfold. The time has come for us to speak regarding personal concerns. We are shocked at the lack of personal and public responsibility and contrition shown by the district office administration. It is clear to many there have been signs, and yet no one spoke up or made efforts to solve the problem. As certified and classified staff bear the brunt of this atrocity, administrative staff levels at the district office remain minimally affected by rifts or layoffs, although percentages indicate otherwise. The recent Community Thought Exchange survey clearly indicated that teachers are important to this community, yet teachers are facing an 18% reduction this coming week. We urge you to take another look at administrative positions at the DO prior to Mr. Drew's employment compared to positions in place now. We believe there is more which can be changed, as do many others. ELD teachers in this district have 2 administrators, their building principal, and an administrator assigned to manage ELD services. This year, the ELD department was managed by the previous director of teaching and learning. Prior to Mr. Drew's resignation, we received regular communication from her regarding teaching and duties unique to the ELD department. But in recent months, that changed. And since March, I received only 2 emails, although the work required by this position increases in the spring. One of these emails was a response to a request for parent ULPA reports, which only she had access to. The first request did not receive a response, and the second request was answered by deflecting the work to building principals who already have excess duties. My busy principal made time to complete this for me within 2 hours. We are disgusted at her response and the negligence to her duties. It has become clear that several district projects in which she had major roles were not managed well at all. We would caution you to critically consider any advice or recommendations regarding the ELD department she provided, as they may not represent SFSD's best interest. And I want to thank you for the public discussion regarding Sequoia Falls location. I had been concerned that I had not heard any public conversation about the expensive rent, and so it's nice to know that that is being discussed. Not finally, but additionally, a statement made at the close of last week's board meeting is troubling us. The board chair said something to the effect of only being able to focus on the budget and current issue before addressing apologies. We are appalled at this response. Isn't focusing on one thing what contributed to the current mess? It leaves us wondering what other things are not being addressed, which may cause further problems. Thank you for listening, as this affects many people who care about this community and the school district.
Thank you, Lynette. I just want to say that I don't think I said the word apology. I think it might have been accountability, which may not change your opinion at all. I just wanted to mention that.
Okay.
Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak? Come on up. Would you tell us your name and relationship to the district, and if you're representing yourself or a group?
Just myself, Sarah Byer, and I'm a teacher in the district.
So we're going to give you 3 minutes, and then Aaron will give you a 30-second one.
I'm in my 7th year as the Title I reading teacher at Butte Creek. I am not a fan of public speaking, as you can see by my shaking, but I've been at home watching all of the board meetings online, and I've been frustrated and angry in some of the discussions. So I felt the nudge to say something. There have been some wonderful community comments, but I think that you need to hear from more staff. I want you to see the faces of those of us who have been most affected by the events from the past few years that led us to the situation we're in now. It has been stated that a crime has not been committed to lead us here, but it seems like financial negligence and mismanagement of public funds should be considered a crime. I do not feel we've received good enough answers as to how exactly this happened, or real remorse from some of the people who allowed it to happen and may have given glowing reviews year after year to the parties ultimately responsible. Life is full of choices and mistakes. We tell our students that they're not defined by their mistakes, but rather how they take responsibility for them. It's a whole lot easier to move forward united as a school community with grace and forgiveness when the people overseeing the process seem genuinely sorry. I've seen this from some of the newer board members who genuinely seem sorry for things I don't think they had any responsibility for, or maybe little responsibility. They're also the ones asking hard questions and seemingly getting no answers. Staff see your advocacy and appreciate it more than you know. You're elected to these positions. I've served on boards, and the work is time-consuming and can be very thankless. I was not overseeing an entire school district. You work for the community, not the district, and this community deserves better. Personally, my household is losing more than our monthly mortgage payment with the furlough days in an already very challenging economy. The loss of this income is a huge hardship for our family, but even so, I don't regret the decision to have these initial furlough days. What other choice did we have? Letting staff members go before the end of the school year without warning would be traumatic for every school in this community. No staff member or student would have been unaffected. Now we have another astronomical amount of money to cut for next year. How many quality staff, families, and students will we lose to other districts? My son transferred from Mount Angel to Butte Creek during COVID. He now attends Silverton High School. We've been so pleased with his school experience so far, first at Butte Creek, now at the high school. But like every other family in our district, we are going to have a choice to make. My son and his classmates deserve better. His wonderful teachers and coaches deserve better. The choices made in this district are going to have ripple effects for years to come, for students, staff, and families. I know some of you take this very seriously, and I really thank you for that. But how many of you are going to have coworkers gone from our district, away from the students you've nurtured and taught together? How many of you are suffering a huge loss in your income? How many of you will be unemployed? How many of you are in classrooms doing end-of-the-year assessments this week with children asking you if you will still be their reading teacher next year? They deserve better.
Thank you, Sarah. Is there anybody online?
There is Kevin online.
All right, Kevin?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Sorry about that. I can, yeah.
Okay, Kevin, can you tell us your relationship to the district and if you are speaking for yourself or for a group?
Yeah, speaking for myself, and my relation is that I have children that attend Silverton schools.
Okay, thank you. And Aaron's going to give you a 30-second warning at 2.5 minutes.
Okay, I probably won't need the whole time, so.
Okay.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak. I'm just curious how the superintendent or the interim superintendent can confidently state that the graph that's floating around on social media is incorrect, but then he goes on to say that it's too nuanced to describe. If you cannot describe something, how can you so confidently tell others that they're wrong? I was at the last meeting, and same as this meeting, I hear lots of I don't knows and maybes. If decisions are to be made, the public and the board must have numbers that they are confident in. The answers I hear from Dr. Morlock last meeting and tonight don't give me any confidence that solid numbers are being provided. It should be more than apparent by now that the money lost from students leaving when schools are closed, such as Prattam and Evergreen, are going to overshadow any money saved. I would ask you to move on from this option and actually focus on real solutions so that the public can get behind you and you can move on with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Anybody in the room? Come on up. Can you state your name, relationship to the district, and if you are speaking for yourself or a group?
Yes, Brenna Reyes, parent of Prattam and Evergreen students. Once again, so we're going to open it up to the transfers across the board. One question is that including opening up kids to Prattam and Evergreen? And if all these transfers happen and then closing the schools is still on the table, where are my kids going to go if every other school has been full of intra and inter-district transfers? So just questions to ponder. And I 100% agree with Kevin. If we're going to make these decisions, they have to be based on really solid numbers and facts and that. So that's all.
And I think I just want to confirm that if you're a transfer in, you're now Silver Falls School District student, and so we would take responsibility, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, you're in.
Okay.
Yep.
Anybody online? All right. Jean?
Thank you. I'm Gene Pfeiffer. I've been in Silverton my entire life. Was on the school budget committee for 25 years, most of the time as chairman, and was the chairman of the high school relocation in 93 and 99. Very familiar with what goes on here. In fact, I do budgets every week, 100 line items, and budgets are to be kept, not to be guessed or played with. So what I've been listening to seems to be a lot of rhetoric and chaos. We're not getting any place. We're talking about things that are way in the distance, selling land. We're talking about whether we could go to a different school or not. This afternoon I presented to a board a solution. And the solution is based on what the Oregon School Bond Manual presents. I was trying to do it with labor, but I now took that out of the formula. We did a budget on Saturday and dissected to determine what categories expressed in the ORS would be eligible for a loan for per the Oregon School Bond Manual, Chapter 3. So by adding the approximate salaries and associated payroll costs listed in the general operating section of the 2023 and 2024 budget, the net all labor costs in general operating fund is about 40 million. If you deduct the 40 million out of the 53 million, that leaves about 13 million of other line items in that section available to be used for the loan purposes. Additionally, transportation is available at about 48,000, food service at 1.7 million, capital projects at 1.8 million. You add all that up and that's about 16.5 million. that we could be applying different sections to borrowing money. So rather than cutting 8.8 million out of requirements, use the funding allowed in Chapter 3 and borrow 7.5 million or less. It could be less. It depends on how you want to look at it. Reduce the labor by only 1.3 million instead of what now is being cut at 8.1 million, mostly teachers and assistants, that was proposed on May 13th. We don't need to do that. We simply adjust how the numbers work. If we continue to be top-heavy, let annual reduction of teachers occur by retirement rather than force, with no replacement. They retire, the number of teachers is
30 seconds.
reduced until a projected sustainable level is met. The interest cost in the example on a loan of 7.5 million at 6% over 6 years is $241,000. That is 0.003 or 1/3 of 1% of our annual budget. This is well worth to avoid stress on our children's education and to avoid a legal monster of undue harm to our children teacher structure. Knowing it would be necessary by law if our taxpayers vote, Silver Falls School District owners would much rather pay the interest over a period instead of long-term damage to our established scholastic
Jean, this needs to be your
culture
last
and athletic
sentence.
excellence.
Thank you.
You folks need to consider this in front of us,
Thank you.
please.
Dan, is there anybody online?
No one online.
Okay. Anybody else? Come on up.
Hi guys, I'm Holly Janes. I am a staff member, classified staff member, soon to be RIFT. I thought you guys should see me and hear what I have to say. I know that you guys are humans and you do this job because you care about our kids just like we do. I love my school. I love my people. I've been there less than a year. I'm the only part-time person, so it's clear that I'm probably going to be, the bottom of the list. I wanted to come here and tell you how it has felt in our school. My principal is the most amazing human on the planet. All of you know it. Everybody here knows it. He's the bomb.com. I just can't. I could sing his praises for years and years. But he's doing something very difficult this week, and he has been for weeks, working with Dr. Joe, trying his best to serve us. I was going to come tell you guys all that and how I've been having anxiety that I don't have and all these things, and we're all suffering. But then I thought about it, and I wanted to put it in the forefront of your minds that our teachers next year are going to be suffering, struggling, overwhelmed, overstretched, but they're going to be missing us. Everyone's sad for me. It's a joke. Oh, Holly, you going to waitress next year? It's kind of funny because it's clear I'm going to go, but they're scared and nervous and sad, so I want you guys just at the forefront of your minds, especially the person that has to tell us all these next few days. It shouldn't be on him to help them through. So if you guys can maybe put in your discussion some sort of support, maybe not counseling, but some resources for our people that love us. Because right now we're thinking of us, that we're going to go, but we're not thinking about them. So I just wanted to put it on the table. Let's add them because I love them and I'm going to miss them, and everyone here is the best. That's all.
Thank you, Holly.
Thank you.
Anybody else who'd like to address the board? Sheldon?
Have some notes the teachers filled out before we read these. Read them and feature. Evening, Sheldon Lassier. Teacher here, community member since I was 6. So I'm speaking for myself, my words are my own. For a year and a half, the SFEA bargained and worked to develop a reasonable pay scale and a decent contract. During that time, teachers in general and the bargaining team in particular were told that we were not experiencing what we were experiencing, so our concerns were not valid or justified, especially as they pertained to actions of district leadership. Nevertheless, we persisted. We agreed on a pay scale that did exactly what it was designed to do and attracted more experienced talent from the surrounding areas than we have been able to do in quite some time. We need to be very clear about what happened next. The furloughs have cut more than this year's raise, meaning that we did not deliver on the promise that enticed teachers to leave their previous districts and come to work with us. Worse, because they gave up their seniority to come here, they now find themselves first on the chopping block. This is the ugliest bait and switch I've seen our district do in the last 35 years. Board, I am angry, I am disgusted, and I'm embarrassed by what our district's leadership has done in the last few years. What's done is done, and little, if anything, can be undone. I can only hope for appropriate accountability and that enough learning occurs that this is never, ever repeated here. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelton. Is there anybody else online, Dan?
No.
All right, anybody else in the audience want to come up? Come on up. Hi there.
Hi,
Can you tell us your name and your relationship to the district?
I'm Tessa Weiler, and I'm a 7th grader at Central Hall.
Okay.
And
We're going to give you 3 minutes, and Aaron's going to warn you at 30 seconds.
thank you. Hi, my name is Tessa Weiler, and I'll be speaking for myself. I'm a 7th grader at Central Hall Elementary, and I have decided to speak on behalf of my community, considering potential closures of Pradham and Evergreen. For me personally, I've had my fair share with terrible teachers and classmates. For example, in 5th grade, my parents, Carl and Emma, decided to unenroll me from my school. The reason for this is because of struggles with the teacher that still continue today. I have been seen as a liar every time I try to express my concerns for a teacher. This past year, I was called a liar and disrespectful. I have never had a mean-spirited attitude towards a teacher, regardless if I like them or not. I've had great teachers and I've had some bad ones, but I've seen the fire that some teachers have to teach. And I understand some budget cuts need to be made, but just remember the difference between wanting to teach and needing to teach. And with that, nobody deserves to have their school closed, whether it's permanent or not. I think the idea of closing 2 schools will rip this community apart. Yes, closing schools might save some money, but I think we can find other ways to save money without making this district worse. It is found that 5 furlough days could potentially save these schools, and I think that some teachers would give anything for that. I also think the class of 2029 would like to graduate from the schools they grew up in that have so much history, but not only in the class of 2029, all the kids looking up to them. In my opinion, I think kids should go to school to learn, not to worry if their schools are going to be closed or not. Please take the options into consideration before a community falls. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tess.
Thank you.
Is there anybody online, Dan? All right, anybody else in the audience like to speak?
Actually, there is now a hand raised. Bree?
Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Bree. Can you tell us your name, your relationship to the district, and if you're speaking for yourself or a group?
Yes, so I'm Bree Hupp. I'm one of the district nurses. I'm a legacy employee, and we contract with Silver Falls School District. I'm a parent to 2.5 kids that are either in the district now or will be in the district. And I'm speaking on behalf of 8 different moms.
Okay, so we're going to give you 5 minutes, and Aaron will give you a verbal 30-second warning.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to speak tonight about the free breakfast and lunch program. This is something I've cared deeply about for the last 5 years, and I've worked on through multiple superintendents. I served on the SACA Board of Directors for 9 years, and childhood hunger is something that we absolutely need to speak about. Specifically, I'm writing in regards to a comment that was made at a recent board meeting about a quote, nasty rumor being spread that the district qualified a long time ago for this program. There is not a single thing that is nasty about wanting this done for kids. The guidelines have changed multiple times in the last 5 years. I've contacted or met with both prior superintendents every month for at least the last 5 years. We also know that the numbers are grossly underreported by families for various reasons, but the point is kids are hungry. It is nearly impossible to teach them when they are not fed. I am positive that more could have and should have been done to pursue this opportunity for students. When all the districts surrounding us are enrolled in this program, I wonder why this hasn't been investigated further. We can't undo what the former superintendent did, and we have no choice but to move forward. I urge all board members to think about the students that are in poverty, the students that are barely above the poverty line, and the students well above income qualifications that may not have access to food for various reasons. If we want children to learn, we have to meet their basic needs first. A former board member said to me a few years ago that Silver Falls School District wasn't in the business of feeding children. I'd like to think we've grown from that place and that everyone can agree that food is a human right and children deserve to be fed in a country with plenty. Please take this opportunity that you have tonight and do what's best for children in need. Thank you.
Thank you, Bree. Anybody in our live audience want to speak to the board?
Colin Scott, been a member of the Silver Falls area since I was born at Silverton Hospital a long time ago. One thing that just as I'm sitting here hearing it, and I don't want to get into this too much, but as we're talking K-8, K-5 closures, all that, the one thing that I sit in here and haven't heard once is, yes, there's threat to leave if the decision had to be made. Obviously, the decision's not there, and there's a long way from that. But if the decision had to be made, it would be hard. But I haven't heard anybody say to the people that would leave or want to leave, why are you leaving? Because even if it had to be made, we still have great schools here that you could stay here and get a great education at, rather than leave to go somewhere else. So I know it's tough, I know it's hard, but there's a lot of hard-working teachers at the other schools out there that would be glad to welcome those kids in, and I still think it would be better than the options of surrounding us at different districts. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Tom. Other people want to speak in the audience? All right, I think we're going to move on then. Next, we have the Sodexo contract for 2024-25, and I think Joe's going to be the presenter on that.
Thank you, Chair Traeger, members of the board. I will put up onto the screen again. So included in your packet, they have the two scoring rating sheets. I did not expect you to go back over those. I did want you to see that we had gone through process. So again, as I spoke earlier, the process is twofold. One is to award the RFP, and then after the award of the RFP, then we enter into negotiations around cost and about structure. CEP, of course, is part of that conversation as well. So that's part of this whole thing. You're not locked into multi-year. This is a 24-25 with option to renew at in the same RFP for the next 3 years. So you have some runway on that. So the rating sheets that were included in the packet are just to show you that we did go through a process with multiple raters to go through and decide which one of, we had two people respond to the RFP. And so we're, tonight I brought the rest of the RFP for those of you who want to do some light reading. But all of the things that are included in there are the things that we required as part of the RFP process. So I don't know if there's any questions that you have around the RFP or the awarding thereof.
Dr. Morlock, I think you mentioned that once, if a decision is made to go forward, the contract negotiations will start on price. Do we have a span or any idea like how high those potential costs could go?
Well, we have proposed costs and we have the costs that we have now. So what we have to do is look at each one of those. One of our bigger challenges is around what we're going to do for staffing and how we make that all fit within the budget. So I don't have a range as far as the numbers go. I mean, there are commodity costs, and we already know what the scaled up costs and some of those are. And because of the size of the company, they already bring in a better price than, let's say, we'd be able to buy on the street. So that's a large part of it, is about what the services are and then how we provide them. Yeah.
I think Owen served on the RFP committee. Who else was a part of that?
The rating scale, they say, was that Kevin Palmer?
Yep, it was Kevin Palmer, myself, Dustin Haney, Elizabeth Little, and a parent, I believe a Butte Creek parent.
Okay. So a pretty big group.
Yep.
Yeah, another thing to think about as we go through this, if this is something that Sodexo does get awarded, that I think we have to focus on is quality. I've heard a lot of feedback from community members that participation isn't as good as it could be because the quality isn't where it needs to be. So that's something I'd really like to see them hone in on, even though prices are higher and things are tough now because things just simply cost more. But I do believe we can operate within a quality model even at current levels of how expensive things are. But I would like to see them hone in on that to help increase our attendance, which will also help us with the potential of the CEP. So
if you're serving better food, they'll probably eat more of it. So it's certainly something that's part of the conversation. But again, doing some feedback during the year next year, like get to a point where we'd like to talk about what this should look like. You can do it within a cost structure. So that's something you could certainly get feedback on as they go forward. And they're a current vendor now, and so I know that there's been some of that already. They did include some of that information in this large packet of stuff.
I know there were some people that are asking, had concerns about one of the companies. There's two spreadsheets. They're on the board book, and they are public documents. There is a major difference in the scores here between the two, and the one that got awarded the company was by far the best on the scoring criteria. I trust the people on the top that made these scores, so I have nothing to refute the decision they made as a board member. I wasn't included in it, but I gotta trust the work that was done. So if you guys want to review it, it's up there on board book if you want to see what the metric was.
Any other discussion, questions, conversation? All right, so we are going to go ahead then, and I'm going to call for a motion because this is an action item. Is there anybody who can make a motion?
I move to approve the Sodexo contract for 24-25 school year.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the Sodexo contract for the 24-25 school year. Last chance for discussion. All right, let's vote.
Josh,
Yes.
Phil,
Yes.
Derek,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Owen,
Yes.
all in favor.
All right, next we have the reopening the transfer acceptance window for 24-25, and I think Joe's going to present that to us.
Yes, thank you, Chair Traeger, members of the board. As described earlier, this is the process we like to use to try to balance some of our class sizes. We propose that we would open that on May 22nd, which would be Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, through June 5th, which would be 2 weeks following on a Wednesday. So we'd have a 2-week open window. The policies that we have are in there. We're actually not limited to the dates because the dates aren't in the policy, but I went ahead and included those, and I know part of our administrative procedures do have that down. So I brought it forward. I thought it was important as we were changing significantly from what we've done in the past, that the board was aware, and then that we would be given the go-ahead if the board so chooses.
Is there a discussion? Let's discuss a little bit before I ask for a motion.
My only concern really was, and already covered this earlier in the previous discussion, that it's limited to school and grade combinations, and so that we don't end up with an overload anywhere. And it's to fill in gaps and make it at some of our schools that we get a better balancing act, hopefully, from it. So I don't see a downside really, and a lot of upside, because it helps us avoid some other things that aren't very appealing at all.
Yeah, I think we've already covered a lot of this, but it seems like a plausible solution before we see kind of what results we get and if it has an impact or not. So I don't think there's too much to additionally discuss.
It was brought up earlier by a commentator, any additional cost administrating this open porthole, so to speak?
Yeah, it's extra work.
Yeah, so.
It is.
For our staff, and but there is with all the different things we're doing.
Every one of these has additional
everything,
costs.
yes.
Yeah.
To
There was
calculate
a
it out.
team here yesterday that worked until just after midnight, so working on additional things. So people are working extra hard to get things
Yeah.
done. So yes, and
And-
it's important enough for us to bring forward to the board, because we think that this is another way to work through it.
And I think those close to it, we understand and know that, but a lot of public needs to understand just how much time is being spent sort of off the clock getting any of these things to function and come numbers and people.
Anything else? All right, can somebody make a motion?
I'll make a motion to reopen the transfer porthole for 24-25 from May 22nd to June 5th.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we reopen the transfer portal from May 22nd through June 5th. Last chance for discussion. All right, let's vote.
Josh?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
Derek?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Owen?
Yes.
All in favor?
Okay, 5C is to authorize the superintendent to conduct a reduction in force. Joe?
Thank you, Chair Traeger, members of the board. As we've discussed earlier, we are trying to work toward getting a balanced budget for 24-25. In that process, it has become necessary for us to conduct a reduction in force. This is, as we have been talking about before too, it's important for our staff to know whether they're employed or not next year, or what their employment might look like. It's been plenty of stress as it is already, and it's important for us to give them as much leeway as possible. We did try to meet the earlier week deadline, but we're a little bit behind that, but not too far. We think it's important to go ahead and move forward so we can help people figure out what their next steps are, or where they'll be placed next year. There's still a lot in flux. I said it earlier too, that things will continue to change as people make decisions, and we've got some other work that we're still doing, but we are going to need to move forward on this one. Remember, we also have not just a reduction in force, but we also have a recall process. So there's a process for bringing the people back as we discover whether we have enough funding or if we have additional spaces available. But at this time, we are asking that the board authorize us to move ahead with this part of the process, so we can work with our employees and make sure that they know what their next steps are, next process.
Discussion.
I'll start. It's with a heavy heart that I think many of us are at the point where we will have to take action here in a couple moments, and it is not lost on us the huge personal impact this is going to have and the tearing of our community with losing good people that care for our children. We are part of this community. I think all of us stepped into this work wanting to do better, never really, thinking we'd be in a spot where we'd have to look some of you in the eye and say, you don't have a job anymore. And I know that's completely difficult on the other side of it, but it's not. We're not machines. We have hearts. We care deeply, and we're sorry.
I dovetail on that with Derek. If you'd asked me, well, about a year ago, when getting on board, if be doing something like this now, never even crossed my mind. It'd be in the realm of possibilities to be looking at this many layoffs. And one would be too many. And this number is staggering. And it's been mentioned here, so many people affected. It's the ones that are RIFT, they're definitely affected. Right now, immediately they'll be affected. The ones, those left behind, that are gonna be doing the work of more now, because, and our sincere hope is that they will, not because we're forcing them to, but we know that they care so much for our kids. And as I mentioned earlier, that's the bottom line, is our kids, and getting them educated and taken care of. In the sense of any kind of public service or working in schools or anything, this is one of the toughest things I've ever had to deal with. Only other thing comes to mind is when, and it's on minor compared to this, is when you're telling a young man or a young woman that they can't play a sport anymore because they're getting cut from a team. Those aren't fun conversations. But it's, I apologize for all of us. I mean, for district, for things that have gone on, and that we've got to this point. I think a certain amount of it, we would have been there, but I think it got exasperated by conditions, and we could go on that all day. But this is not a motion that will be made lightly, and not one that will be voted on lightly, but it's a necessary step. And many lives are affected, and not for the betterment.
I just have to say at this point, I mean, I don't know what to really say other than the word that comes to my mind right now is just gutted. I think we all are feeling to that point of having to go about and to authorize, to make an authorization and reduction in force. Every one of us is feeling this. Like Derek said, each one of us have been feeling this for a long time. I can't imagine with what our teachers are feeling, what those who are going to lose their jobs are feeling. I just don't have any words other than I just sorry we got to this place. And yeah, I just have no words other than I'm sorry that we got to this place, and we have to be in this position. My sincerest, heartfelt thanks goes to everybody affected by this decision, and I mean that. I appreciate every one of you.
I'll go. I'll try to keep it brief because I'm a softie. Those of you that are gone, you did nothing wrong. It wasn't your fault. and I'm sorry. There's a lot of things I'm upset about, but I don't let this tear us apart. So I'm scared. I'm tired of the fighting. I want to move forward. I want to see if we can build back up and get as many of you back as quick as we can. The sentiment, Holly, you had earlier, my goodness, what a person you are. Thinking about your colleagues when you're the one getting laid off. So, sorry, guys.
I'll say that this is really hard. And I'm sorry to the staff members who are going to get those RIF notices. That's going to be super hard, and I don't think there's any way for us to understand that impact. It's so great that, and it's multiplied by like 80 people. So I'm sorry for all of you, especially those who came from other places to Silver Falls. That really, I'm sorry, that's terrible. I'm sorry to the principals who have to deliver the message. That's gonna be heartbreaking, and again, it is hard to imagine what's that like. We can only imagine. We're not in your shoes, and we are sorry that you're having to shoulder that burden. I'm sorry for the staff that remain, because your job's going to be harder, because you're going to have less people to do the same amount of work, and that's going to be hard for everybody. And I'm sorry to the students who are not going to get the same level of education as they have. Well, I think they would. I think teachers are going to continue to give an amazing education, and it's going to be harder for those teachers to do it. And maybe they have to take, more sick days, or they're paying more money out of pocket, or all the things that teachers do in order to make things better for their kids. I think, I'm sorry that you're going to have to go that extra mile when it would have been better to have those extra staff on hand. And again, sorry to the students for losing the people that make a difference in your life. There's not enough words that I can say to express how sorry that I am, and I know everybody up here is, that we have to make this motion.
Well, I'll just conclude it by saying that I completely agree with all my fellow board members. And Holly, thank you. Love you. Seeing friends that are losing their jobs is hard. And I think to just say that to all the people that have encouraged us to really focus in and work hard and do our best to try and make the best decisions. And this is a hard decision, but it's the best decision that I think we can make tonight. It needs to happen. At the same time, it hurts to see our friends' faces. And so, sorry.
One thing I'd like to add, and I would hope the whole board feels this way. I can only speak to this for myself, but one thing, you know, all through life, lessons. You got to learn things. And I hope as a board that we've learned to ask questions, to have, when people say to us things, them not fall on deaf ears, and to take them seriously and listen. And maybe things wouldn't be quite as bad as they are or as far down the road as they are now. Who knows? Maybe they'd be exactly the same. We don't have a crystal ball, but we got to do better.
For sure.
You guys for sharing your human side. We know you're not machines, but it feels really good to hear those words.
Thank you, Holly.
Is that is it time for a motion?
I'll do it.
Okay.
Move to authorize Superintendent Dr. Morlock to conduct the reduction in force.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we authorize Superintendent Dr. Morlock to conduct a reduction in force. Any further discussion?
Okay, let's take the vote.
Josh,
Yeah.
Phil,
Yes.
Derek,
With a heavy heart, yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Owen,
Yes.
all in favor.
I think we have one more action item, which is the revised board activities and budget calendar for 2023-24. I think Kim is going to present that to us.
So yes, sorry about that. So thank you, board. While we're dealing with the most difficult situation that I think any of us could imagine here, we also have to make sure that we can maintain the experience our students need, our staff deserve, our community deserves. So with that, we will be, we'll have a lot to do over the next few weeks. We will be coming to the board with a supplemental budget for the current fiscal year that is required due to some of the variances in the adopted budget to what our anticipated changes are. We'll be bringing those to the board, but we also need to meet Oregon state budget law timelines and must have the budget for the 2024-2025 fiscal year must be fully approved and adopted by the board before June 30th. So this is a huge lift. This is usually something that takes months to develop and goes to a budget committee and then on to the adoption process. We are going to be doing the entire thing in less than a month. It's going to be warp speed, and it's going to be what we need to do to make sure operations are in place July 1, and it will then be worked over again as we get into the new year. As I think was mentioned, we will the budget will be a working document as it should be. So on board book there is a revised calendar showing that our first budget committee meeting will be held Wednesday, June 12th. There was, I apologize, I had a date in there as Wednesday, June 13th. Wednesday, June 12th is the first budget committee meeting, followed by a second budget committee meeting the very next evening, if needed, which I do anticipate we'll be holding both of those. And the budget hearing, where the board will need to adopt the budget, Wednesday, June 26th. The state requirements regarding the budget process are extremely stringent. And while I wish we had alternatives to this timeline, I literally went from June 30th backwards in the requirements for newspaper publication. Yes, it still must be put in the newspaper a certain number of days prior to meetings, and so this is the furthest out we can go with the process. So present that to the board for discussion and be happy to answer any questions.
You said Wednesday, June 26th, but this says Thursday, June 27th. I'm just confused.
Thank you. I
What-
believe
where-
that
On the,
Oh, I have, is what's on board book
I
different?
printed it off a board.
Because it says Wednesday, June 26th on the board book.
does it here?
I do apologize. We
You made a
had
switch.
some date swaps. Yes, there was a version out there earlier today, and in our rush to get this done. So these dates on here, Wednesday, June 26th, will be the budget hearing.
Okay. Thank you.
And it's a so what's not correct here is it's supposed to say Wednesday, June 12th? Is that what you said?
Yeah, if you refresh, it should say that at this
Yeah,
point.
Wednesday
Wednesday, June 12th,
is the
Thursday,
12th.
June 13th.
Okay, I gotta
Yeah.
refresh.
Yep.
This will be posted both on the website as well as the copy on board book at this moment. Does have the 12th and 13th as
And
well
the
as the
26th.
26th.
Okay.
These will be published on the school district website as well as in the newspaper per state budget law.
Okay.
Thank you, Kim. I know you're working your tail off.
Wish we had some more time on this. However, we are, with the action that was just taken, we will be able to identify where our expenses will be, which is what we must do to be able to build a budget. And we will build the budget to meet the state law, and then we will continue to evaluate as opportunities for maybe additional savings arise, and hope being that we can potentially bring more staff back in from our recall list, so. I did want to add, as we have been preparing for the 24-25 budget, we have included the allocation for classified employee unemployment due to the new legislation, as well as approximately an additional $1 million for the RIF unemployment. We may have anywhere between $1.5 and $2 million of unemployment costs next year.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's what I thought I understood, and
yes.
people brought that up.
The $8.8
Yeah.
million reduction did account for the costs that would be associated with a reduction.
Already in the 8.8 figure, okay.
Thank you for clarifying that, Kim.
Of course.
I don't think we have much to discuss. Like, I know that those 2 dates are gonna be tough for me, but we don't have any choice. So, I mean, we've just gotta live with what we've got based on what Kim's told us, so.
Okay.
I think we need a motion.
I move to adopt the revised board activities and budget calendar for 23-24.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the revised board activities and budget calendar for 23-24. Any further discussion? All right, let's vote.
Josh,
Yes.
Phil,
Yes.
Derek,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Owen,
Yes.
all in favor.
Any good of the order before we adjourn? Okay, we are gonna meet tomorrow night. And what time is it again, Debbie?
6:15,
Okay.
I remember.
All right, without objection, meeting adjourned.